All right, let's dive right into this explainer and explore a fascinating and honestly often completely overlooked reality of World War II. When we think of the Second World War, and specifically the D-Day landings, what pops into your head? Probably the massive scale of firepower, the sheer number of troops, and the incredible bravery on those beaches. But actually, scratch that. The razor-thin margins of victory were dictated by something far less visible. They were determined by actionable intelligence, data gathering, and, believe it or not, meteorology. Today we're going to look at how having the right information, or lacking it entirely, completely altered the course of history.
We're starting this narrative in the dark, chaotic waters of the English Channel on the night of April 27, 1944. The quote, "We sailed along in fatal ignorance," was written by Lieutenant Eugene E. Exton, a medical officer aboard a tank landing ship. And it really hits the nail on the head. It perfectly captures a high-stakes moment where a sheer lack of data and awareness led to an absolute tragedy, just weeks before the actual D-Day invasion.
Section 1. Disaster at Slapton Sands. To really grasp the ultimate success of D-Day, we first have to examine this tragic dress rehearsal. On April 19th, the Allies finalized plans for Exercise Tiger. This was a massive rehearsal designed to get Force U ready for their eventual landing at Utah Beach. The plan was heavily orchestrated, bringing combat-ready engineers and tons of equipment into Lime Bay, but it's like a deadly puzzle. Just days earlier, on April 10th, the German Navy had been ordered to aggressively ramp up their patrols. Because of this crash collision of timelines, in the early hours of April 28th, Convoy T4 was brutally ambushed by German fast torpedo boats.
So why was this convoy just sitting prey? Well, Convoy T4 was fundamentally vulnerable. They were using tank landing ships, or LSTs. Now, these vessels were cavernous, incredibly slow, and super unwieldy, basically giant floating targets. And to make matters worse, they were dangerously underprotected. The Royal Navy was stretched so thin across the Channel and the Atlantic that this convoy only had one single escort. Throw in inadequate radio communications and you have a recipe for disaster. But the kicker here is that the Germans held the intelligence edge. Thanks to actionable data from the Luftwaffe and Germany's naval intelligence, the B-Dienst, they knew exactly where to strike.
Section 2. The German strategy pitted. Now, you might be wondering why those German boats were patrolling with such aggressive ferocity in the first place. It all comes down to Directive Number 51. This was a fundamental strategic pivot ordered by Hitler in November 1943. He completely shifted the military focus away from the Eastern Front, transferring resources to anticipate and repel the inevitable Allied invasion in the West. But here is the catch. By the spring of 1944, the German Air Force, the Luftwaffe, was largely grounded. They just didn't have the air superiority anymore. So the German Navy became the absolute last desperate line of defense. And this chilling directive from Grand Admiral Karl Donitz highlights exactly what that desperation looked like. He ordered his men to take risks without consideration for the survival of the ship itself. I mean, that is a suicide pact mentality right there. The German Navy was relying entirely on these agile, fast-moving S-boats to strike Allied convoys in the dark, capitalizing on whatever scraps of intelligence they could gather to disrupt the invasion preparations.
Section 3. The Secret Weather War.
Okay, this comparison is the absolute crux of our explainer. You have to remember, weather forecasting in 1944 was a matter of extreme national security. The Allies had incredibly detailed charts. They boasted a wealth of observations from all over the UK and Europe, data from ships and reconnaissance flights, and most importantly, classified data they got by cracking the German Enigma code. The Allies could literally read the German weather reports. In stark contrast, the Germans were flying blind. Because they failed to crack Allied codes, they had a massive blind spot over the UK and surrounding waters. They were stuck relying on super limited data from U-boats and decrypted Russian reports. Essentially, the Germans were guessing, while the Allies had a comprehensive, high-definition map of the sky. So, armed with all this superior data, Allied meteorologists, led by Group Captain James Stagg, were continuously hand-drawing charts every few hours. And because of the vast network of observation sites they tapped into, they successfully mapped out a crucial ridge of high pressure moving over the Atlantic. They spotted a tiny, highly classified weather window that the Germans simply had no way of seeing. Section 4. Forecasting the invasion.
Can you imagine the pressure on Stagg and his team? It must have been astronomical. Just think about this number, 160,000 Allied troops. The entire scale of D-Day, including 5,000 ships and 13,000 aircraft, all preparing to assault a 50-mile stretch of heavily fortified French coastline, hung in the balance of one single meteorological prediction. Stagg was handed a strict wish list of ideal conditions from the military commanders, and it was entirely up to him to tell them exactly when to go.
The margins for victory here are just incredible. Stagg, tracking that ridge of high pressure, advised that conditions on June 6 would be marginal but sufficient to launch. Meanwhile, the German forces, totally plagued by their data blind spots, falsely forecasted that the weather would stay entirely unsuitable for an Allied assault. So what did they do? They relaxed their guard. And get this, what's even more astonishing is that if the Allies had delayed the invasion until the next suitable tides, those troops would have sailed right into the worst English Channel weather seen in 20 years. D-Day would have been a catastrophic failure. And that realization definitely wasn't lost on the commanders. General Dwight D. Eisenhower later penned this incredible note at the bottom of an official report. "Thanks, and thank the gods of war we went when we did." Eisenhower's profound relief really underscores just how perfectly the intelligence and the weather forecasting had to align to avert an absolute historic disaster and finally secure a foothold in Europe.
Section 5, Modern Military Meteorology. So, why does all this history matter to us today? Well, because the legacy of leveraging weather data as a critical military asset is still very much a reality. Just look at how modern operations handle this. Step 1, they deploy specialized mobile MET units globally, right alongside armed forces personnel. These forecasters undergo intensive military training. Step 2, they gather highly localized, real-time meteorological data directly inside combat zones. And Step 3, just like Group Captain Stagg did, they brief military commanders on weather impacts prior to launching operations. From the beaches of Normandy all the way to modern military bases in Afghanistan, meteorological intelligence continues to be a primary shield that keeps troops safe and operations viable. As we wrap up this explainer, I want to leave you with something fascinating to chew on. We've seen how hand-drawn charts and cracked codes completely changed the world in 1944. So, how will modern data and automated forecasting dictate the outcome of tomorrow's conflicts? We live in an era of satellites, AI, and instant global communication now. The razor's edge of warfare has literally only gotten sharper, and in the future, the ultimate weapon might just be whoever has the absolute best data. Keep that in mind the next time you check your local forecast. Thanks for joining me on this deep dive.